I remember when we first connected and we got the email from you and you were asking us to speak to your company, the ERG, which we always love doing. You mentioned, do you remember how you described the employees?
I did. I remember saying we are some of the happiest Black people you will ever meet.
You did.
Yeah. And it was true at the time. Like, tech is a unique space, but it's still super flawed. And I regret not being able to talk about that aspect of it. And I realized it when we got into the conversation. All of a sudden they were censoring me, candidly. Like, you can't, like, we had to get our questions pre-approved. There were questions I couldn't ask. I felt super not able to be myself in our conversation. Yeah. And I'd never had that experience at the company before. I was like, this is Black History Month and we cannot ask the conversations. I was like, okay, so maybe, things aren't as perfect as I thought. Still a great company, but it was a big eye opener actually having you guys come and speak.
Yeah. And I wish I could say that we take credit for that. But I also don't want to make it seem as if like this is something that we're not accustomed to. Like we know that it's a sensitive topic and it's one on several levels, like even just outside of talking about issues that are specific to Black professionals, just the idea of sort of empowering yourself to be in a position to walk away from a job in and of itself can be seen as an offense. But you used the word censored, and I was going to ask if you've ever felt censored, but I guess you did because like you felt that. How did you cope with that? Because I know I've dealt with feeling censored in an environment where I was also being encouraged to be myself
and be honest and open, and it's a safe space.
Yeah,
but it's not really.
But it's not really. Yeah.
I think I actually asked a question that wasn't approved. And I actually got kind of kicked off of the ERG, like after that interaction with you guys. Wow. So I mean, but I didn't care. That's the freedom of being financially free. It's like, okay, it kind of stung a little bit. Like, wow, I asked a question that I wasn't allowed. And we had the most tame conversation ever.
It was super tame. I'm trying to think of what it could have been.
I was actually disappointed because I'm like, I know how much you guys have to share. And I knew we just scratched the surface. And same with the other guests. Yeah. And it was because we were really constrained in what we could ask. And it was information that the community needed. Because if you've seen what's happened with that stock, you have a lot of people who went from millionaires to not. Probably because they didn't have the financial advice of like, sell that company stock when it's high. Don't keep it all, But we weren't allowed to have that conversation. But yeah, so it sucked. And it opened my eyes to the fact that there is no perfect place. These corporate environments, even the great ones, and Zoom is like it's an amazing place to work. Like if you're going to be a Black person in corporate America, I would say go tech. But there was still constraints that made me glad that I was free to make moves when I needed to. But I still had to mind what I said at work because it was very clear when I stepped out of bounds, I was put in the corner a little bit. So it sucked.
Do you find that the company, or just even if not that specific company, but do you find that some issues or some demographics get a little more kind of wiggle room to discuss their issues? I'm thinking, there's a bunch of different corporate responsibility topics that one can take on. And one of the challenges we would have was that our company was so vocal about some ERG topics. We would support parades and we would dress up and we'd get volunteer time off. And if it was this organization, that was, fine, even though that organization dealt with tough topics too. But when it came specifically to Black issues and Black employees, it was like, whoa. Did you find that they were open across the board and it was just this topic, or was everything kind of watered down?
That's a good question. I can't speak for other groups and if they felt watered down. I can say uniquely as a Black person that I feel like we have more just editing coming, not just from the company, but just even from our elders, like there's so many layers of it that we take with it. And maybe it's my generation because I'm like right on the verge of X and Y. I feel like my younger colleagues are so much more free and empowered to like, just be like, I'm me, accept it. And I'm getting there more and more, but I think a lot of it is our own self-policing, you know, like the people who were telling me what I could and could not say were other people of color who just didn't want to rock the boat too much and lose their privilege and their access. I don't know that I felt it from, you know, I felt like my other colleagues wanted me to be myself, and I didn't feel like it was safe to really say everything. And I don't know that I can't speak for other groups if they feel that same way, but I feel like Black folks, a lot of times we police ourselves. And it's a lot of times the more senior and older Black people at the company who are the ones who are going to be like, don't step out of these bounds, you know? That's just been my experience.
On a personal level, is it heartbreaking for you? Because for me, it was heartbreak. I struggled to try to find the words or the word to describe how it felt. And for me, it just kind of felt like heartbreak because I'd spent so much time and made so much investment in my personal and professional life into these ideas, only to feel as if they weren't nearly as serious as I had originally given them credit for. And then when you also start to sense that policing from people who look like you, who you feel like are supposed to be pushing the agenda, but they aren't, because they also recognize that they might have their hands slapped or have power or influence or even money taken away from them.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I'm curious. It sounds like you felt the same way, but how do you describe it as heartbreak or do you think about it differently? Wow.
That's deep. Like I think of it as trauma. I guess heartbreak could be another word for it. For me, I think I always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think a lot of times it's coming from a place of love. Like they're trying to protect you and guide you. Even, you know, my mom was a HR professional in her career. And she would even, like, I wear my hair natural, but before an interview, she'd be like, you're going to straighten your hair, right? Like, it's like that harm from the people who love us and their way of protecting us. And it's like, she wears her hair in an afro. She's never had a relaxer. But for me, she's like, you need to be this way for your success. And for me, like, that's like something I've tried to impact for years of like, I know these people love me and want the best for me, but they're also trying to force me into these boxes of, this is how we know you need to be to succeed. And so I try to think of it as, we're just a community that has been conditioned to not be authentic. And it's going to take really generations to undo that sense of it's not safe to be yourself, you know? And I don't know if other communities feel that same level of conditioning, but I definitely see it in my world. And again, financial freedom for me is why I think the message you guys have is so important. And for me, just knowing, like, I know I can walk away. So it doesn't hurt. It's not as heartbreaking because I'm like, you don't have my heart. You're literally these jobs are a means to achieve my goals. And it hurts, but it's more of a surface hurt because I know my gold is buried elsewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think the more we can get that message out of like, don't put all your eggs in these baskets that aren't, you know, this is not for you. There's maybe in a few generations, it'll be a more level playing field. But I think for anyone, the corporate environment is kind of a tricky landscape where you're always going to be having to make choices between who you are and what you need to do for business purposes. Yeah. And the quicker you can get free from that, the less painful it is, I think.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Cashing Out the Podcast. To see more videos like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to turn on your notifications. To get your copy of Cashing Out the book, visit Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, or download the audiobook on Audible.